There's never been a better time to have SiriusXM. With even more exclusive content, with over 150 channels in your vehicle, including the widest, deepest variety of music, ad-free. Root for your team. Get news. Listen to whatever makes you laugh. And hear all about your favorite stars. Your Platinum Plan offer includes more than ever before to enjoy online, on your phone, or at home. Create your own ad-free personalized stations powered by Pandora. Hear ad-free extra channels filled with music and enjoy favorite shows with SiriusXM Video. Thousands of hours of shows and performances on demand. What you love is on now.
So as you guys know, Hertz Audio is no newcomer in the DSP universe, but recently they've released a brand new nifty compact unit called the S8 DSP, and with it, a multi-platform software that you're going to learn all about today. We've got Ken Ward in the studio with us, and he's going to show us how it works so you guys can get tuning. This is CMA Workshop presented by SiriusXM, Hertz Audio, and it starts now. Hey, what's going on, everybody? And thanks for tuning in to this CMA workshop presented by SiriusXM. I'm your host, Ben Wu, and that's right, we've arrived at a workshop. That means you're about to learn something because we've got a product expert that's going to show you exactly how it's done. Of course, we're talking about Hertz Audio and Ken Ward, and more specifically, a brand new DSP processor called the S8 DSP, which you're going to find a lot of uses for this one, guys. You know, Hertz Audio has already been playing in marine for quite some time. We're talking something that'll work for motorcycles, something that'll work for power sports, for marine, and of course for car. But before we get too deep into it, let's go ahead and invite to the studio their Canadian distributor representing Automobility. We've got both Steve Colombe, their product manager, along with Phil Cameron, who is their new product specialist. What's going on, gentlemen?
Hey, Ben.
Bonjour.
Bonjour, bonjour.
Company today.
I tell you what, Steve, I mean, I'm always happy to have you in the studio, but Mr. Cameron, nice to have you back. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, and it's great to be back.
Well, that's good because we're going to be talking some DSP, some technical stuff. And man, when I think about technical stuff, I think of you, my man. Like, you've always been the technical guy in the industry. What is your new role? This is kind of like you're back at Automob. What is your new role at Automobility?
All right, so my new role at Automob will be, my title is product specialist, so I'll be taking care of our dealer support. So if you need some help with any of the products that we sell, I'll be here to help you out. I'm more of a tech guy than a sales guy, and I've been doing this for longer than I care to remember. And gray-haired and gray-bearded, I've been doing this for a long time. And for people that know me, I've been in this industry for a long time. I've been mainly known for remote start, but I've started doing a lot of audio, and audio has always been a passion for me. And I'm here to support any of your needs that you may have from any of the products.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I mean, that's great because I might be bumping into you on many different types of shows, maybe, later on in remote start and alarms and security. And here we are talking about DSP and Hertz Audio. Steve, it looks like you've added some membership to your squad. Looks like you're getting more team members because I got another guy that we're going to bring on here, also wearing an Automob shirt. Yes, that's right. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go bring on my good friend. Surprise! Mr. Justin Bond, Western Canadian mobile specialist and account manager for Automob and the firm. Justin, welcome. Well, I don't need to welcome you back to the show. You've been on the show a million times, but not quite in this capacity. What is your new role at Automobility?
I mean, my primary focus is obviously going to be working with Phil, but I'll be looking after doing a lot of the product training and the boots on the ground and making sure that our dealers are comfortable with our products, using, selling, installing them. In Western Canada is predominantly where I will be kind of looking after for the training and stuff like that.
That's amazing. What a squad you've assembled. I'm going to give a shout out to Rob Nelson, who's obviously the owner of Automob. He's got quite the team going on. I mean, Justin, you're bringing a wealth of knowledge, obviously in audio, especially in higher end DSP kind of scenarios and multi-platform. I mentioned motorcycle, I mentioned marine. These are all things that you're comfortable with. And what a great lineup you have, starting especially with Hertz Audio. I'd like to just hear your feedback a little bit about the type of brand Hertz is and how you feel about that moving forward.
So, I've been spoiled in the industry. In my previous tenure, where I've gotten to work with a lot of the best aspects in certain areas of this industry. So to move forward with a company like Electromedia, like Hertz, it's very exciting for me because it's what they do in specialization, which is always what's appealing to me, right? When you look at the fundamental core of the brand and the ideology, right? For me, that means so much, and that's what entices and attracts, right? So to be part of a brand like this is exciting, and it's just it's another stepping stone for me to, I get to work with people like Phil, who I remember sitting in Phil's trainings, before I was a trainer, and I mean, I've gotten to spend a lot of time with Ken. Ken and I have worked together in the past, so even to be able to work closer with Ken in the future and on this aspect, it's just going to make me better, which is going to help make all of our dealers and then hopefully the Canadian industry better.
Well said, sir. Steve, I'm going to bring it back to you before we bring in our specialist. Hertz is an important brand for you guys at Automob. It offers some very unique solutions and products. Why do you feel that right now, especially with the launch of this product and the platform, that Hertz is such an attractive option when it comes to DSP for dealers?
Well, as we mentioned it before, Hertz is such a complete line. We had the H8 DSP for the car audio. They also had the H8 for marine, that can control up to 3 zones in a boat. And now the addition of that new S8, which will pretty much wrap all the categories, including, you mentioned it, motorcycle, power sports. It can also be used in car. It can be used in boats. So, that's a very key product that just been added to the lineup, and very excited about it.
Well, there's a lot of excitement behind it. So let's hear from the expert, shall we say. Let's bring on our expert today. He's no stranger to the CMA platform, of course. He is the International Technical Marketing Manager for Electromedia. Today, we'll be talking about Hertz Audio. Let's bring on Mr. Ken Ward.
Hey, everybody. How you doing?
Good to have you on again, sir. We were just talking about the excitement being built around this particular product from Hertz, the S8 DSP. You've been at the show and you've been talking to dealers. What do you think about it is creating such a stir within the car audio community?
I think that the industry has become expectant that if a DSP is a small physical size, that it got that way by leaving out all the good stuff. And so we have dealers who are very good dealers of ours who have been eagerly awaiting this product, and they are still discovering new things about it that excite them even more. We've had dealers order several, and with the first one, they discover things they didn't even know it did, which is really my fault because it's my job to make sure they know these things. So I'll get right on that. But we've taken a lot of the lessons that we've learned from DSP leadership in our various brands over the years and applied it to a smaller package and a device that is intended for more day-to-day use. It's not a flagship. It's not something that you're going to get to do on a rare basis. It's intended to be an everyday workhorse.
Very nice. And, we've mentioned it already, multi-platform capable motorcycle. I mean, I've seen Carlos Ramirez from NVS. He's been talking about, I think he's on his 3rd video review of it. So obviously there's a place for it in motorcycle. We know he does a lot of that. But, Justin touched on it, power sports, and of course, marine and car. Man, this sounds like it's an all-in-one solution. So having said that, what exactly are we going to focus on today, Ken, from a training perspective?
Well, I want to talk about the product a little bit to set the table for what we're going to be working with. And then I want to open up the PC software. It's not the only software available for it. We'll talk about that. But I want to open up the PC software largely because in the format we're in, it's the one that's easiest to see. and I want to walk through the options that are available and the process that a dealer would use to set this up. So if you are experienced with DSP and you're very comfortable with it, this will help you just find the things you're looking for. If DSP is something that you're just getting your arms around, then this might even be more valuable for you in terms of having a recipe to follow. And that's one of the ways that I always like to describe it, is that it's a recipe. You can make chocolate chip cookies a number of different ways. And we know this because we've never really managed to duplicate my grandmother's recipe. She would go off book and do things no one knows now. But there's still chocolate chip cookies. And so what we want to do is provide a tool that our dealers can use to make whatever kind of chocolate chip cookie they want, and not tell them this is how you must use it, beyond the basic structure of how any product's going to get installed.
Amazing, amazing. Well, I don't know about you boys. I'm ready to take notes. We're going to give you the whole stage here, Ken, so we could learn all about this new platform. That's the accompaniment to the S8 DSP. Take it away, Ken.
All right. Well, the first thing I'm going to do, and I learned this many years ago, is I'm going to actually bring up the box, and I'm going to Vanna White the box a little bit. It's a pretty small package, and it's got a few things on it that should be a good giveaway. One of them is our USS logo here. And USS stands for Universal Speaker Simulator. And it's an adaptive load that keeps factory systems from muting the output because they think that the speakers have been physically disconnected. And of course, they usually have been. We usually have physically disconnected the speakers, and instead we have connected the speaker wires of the factory system to our DSP. But this DSP does a really good job of A, showing the system the proper load at startup to make sure muting isn't an issue, and B, not dissipating too much current afterward, but still providing enough of a load to keep Class D output sections, because a lot of factory amplifiers and even the amp chips inside the radio can be a Class D output nowadays. And those need to see a load where the impedance is low enough to prevent high frequency distortion and changing the frequency response. So USS is something that I've noticed I need to mention over and over because it works invisibly. It doesn't have a button, doesn't have a switch, doesn't have an LED. So we need to let people know that it's in there. Another thing that we have here is high-res audio. We're certifying as many devices as high-res as we can because we think that consumers see the high-res logo and immediately associate that with sound quality. And as we know, you can have a device that is certified to play high frequencies enough to be high-res, and that doesn't mean that it necessarily sounds great, but it's much, much easier to have the logo than it is to have that conversation with a customer. So we just want to make it easier for our dealers to associate the sound quality that we know this product's capable of. Now, I've actually got the device right here, and you can see that it's very small. And all of the connectors, and I learned this back when I was in the alarm and remote start business, all of the connectors are on the same side, and that means it's going to be a lot easier to put it into tiny spots, especially in the motorcycle world. Now, you can see that the connectors are a standard locking automotive connector. They're not completely IP rated for waterproofness, but the circuit board is conformally coated. So if you get a little bit of moisture, the circuit board is going to be marine grade in that regard. Now, we have a speaker input connector and we have a preamp input connector, and those are the same pinout and the same connector. So if you need to, you can use either one. Then we have an output connector and power and remote and our USB and a Bluetooth LED. This doesn't stream Bluetooth audio. What this does is it allows you to have an app control functions of the device, not just the configuration software, which I referred to before, but there's actually a remote control function in the app. And we'll show you that at the end. So it's set up where you can use screws or wire ties to secure it in place. Sometimes using cable clamps is the best way to secure one of these. And because of its size, we think that it'll go in a lot of places that other DSPs can't go. And because there's no adjustments on it, once you run that USB cable, you don't have to get at this device. So that said, let's go ahead and switch over to the software. Let's bring that up. Let's see. Are we there? Let's see. Let's go to here and there. Are we good? All right. The technical gremlins always wait till the last moment, don't they? All right. So how are we doing now? Because I can't see it. All right, great. So the first thing I want to do here on the software is I want to select settings. Hey, Ben, can you see that software? All right. So we are famous for having a configuration wizard or a setup wizard in every single one of our DSPs. And the idea there is that we know our dealers who don't do DSP every day are not necessarily going to memorize a bunch of steps for every single product that they carry. And so we want to set them up to succeed and not challenge them with, here, did you memorize all 8 steps or anything like that? So what I'm going to do right off the bat is I'm going to select the IO configuration wizard, and it's going to guide us through configuring the device. And the first thing it asks us is, would you like to configure this for a motorcycle? Would you like to configure this for a car? Is it left or right-hand drive? Or would you like to configure it for what the app calls free placement? I always think this is for a spacecraft. We know our dealers are going to find ways to use this that we haven't predicted. So free placement allows you to do that. Now, if I'm going to go ahead and select car, even though I could select motorcycle, and I'm going to walk through a car configuration. So here are all the different speaker locations that the S8 is set up to support. And we need to make sure that only the bright blue ones are the speakers we're using in our system are highlighted. So let's assume that we don't have a center speaker. So I'll turn those off. Let's assume that we're going to have a two-way active up front. So I'll turn those off. And let's assume that I'm going to use a coaxial in the rear and 2 subwoofers. So that adds up to 8 channels. And that works out great because the S8 is an 8-channel output device. So this is using all 8 channels of our device. So I will go to next. And it's asking me here, this two-way check is asking me if this mid-tweeter combo up front uses a passive crossover or if it's going to be an active system. And I'm going to leave it disabled so that we can go active on our front stage. Now it's confirming how I'm going to wire everything up. Am I going to use the tweeters as channels 1 and 2, which of course is what we should do, right? Am I going to use the odd numbers on the left side of the car? Once again, that's what I prefer, but maybe it's wired up some other way. Now, if you're going in to change these numbers and you accidentally allow a conflict, if you accidentally use the same channel number for multiple labels, you get this red car. And it tells you, hey, we can't go forward until you resolve this conflict. And once you do resolve the conflict, the red goes away. You're ready to go to the next step. Now, are we going to use RCA or high level? I'm going to select high level in this instance. And now you can see something that is new for the S8 because it's a new product. It wasn't in the H8 DSP, which is our first Helix DSP. A function like this has been in our Marine DSP for a couple of years now. And this is an active mixer that allows you to take the inputs, which in this matrix are across the top, and decide which outputs that signal will come out. Now I'm going to show you something here. I'm going to go ahead and make the left subwoofer mono. I guess I'm going to do that in a minute. So this is the default here. Now I'm going to go ahead and make these mono later on. So now I'm going to go to next. And in this instance, I'm going to skip over this. But this is where I could set the levels for the head unit, which is a process we've had in DSPs for several years. And it uses a sine sweep. The reason we use the sine sweep, this is actually something I should explain. A lot of dealers will set levels using a fixed sine wave, 1K or 40 Hertz. And when you do that, most of the time that dealers do that, they haven't actually checked the frequency response of the system. So they don't know if the response is up or down at the frequency that they have selected. I have a Honda radio that I use a lot in my trainings, and it happens to be 8 dB down at 1K, and everything else is relatively flat. So if you were to take an O-scope and play a 1K test tone and set the level for that head unit on your DSP, the only frequency that wouldn't be clipping would be 1K, and everything else would be 8 dB too loud. So it's really important, if you're going to use a fixed sine wave, to check the frequency response with your electrical RTA beforehand. But what we're doing in this case is we run through a sine sweep, and if clipping happens at any frequency, then this little virtual LED at the top will let you know about it. And if you need to change the sensitivity to dial that in, you can select all, and you can move these all up and down together. And you can see there's 6 of them. The reason there are 6 of them is that we have 6 input channels on the S8. Now that's 2 more input channels than are on the H8. And the mixer is configurable. So you do have more OEM integration capability, which is more of an issue for cars than it is for motorcycles or marine. But we have 6 input channels here that you can configure however you want. Now, after you've got this set up, we're going to go to the input equalization section. Now, I know I was joking earlier about leaving things out, and that's really how you make products smaller in many ways, as you leave things out. But what we have here on the S8 is a manual input equalization process. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bands for each input channel. A lot of small DSPs have no input equalization at all. And our big DSPs often have automatic de-equalization. This device didn't have the horsepower to run a de-equalization routine, but we do have the ability to individually equalize each of the input channels. And it's not, if you just want to use this as a graphic EQ, you can do that, but it is a full parametric EQ. And as you guys know, a parametric EQ just means you can change the parameters. If the last band you have is preset to one frequency and you need to nudge it over a little bit to be at a slightly different frequency, we support that. Our parametric band doesn't allow you to select any frequency in the audible range. You can't take a band that is set for 30 and put it at 15,000, but it does allow you to move them back and forth to fine tune what you need. Now, after you've set this up, and if you're going to do a really, really precise job of setting up an input EQ like this, this one doesn't have the RTA built into it. You will want to connect your electrical RTA to the preamp outputs of the device to set them. You don't have to use a really high-end RTA to do that. Some people even do it with the 5-star interface and their phone to set it up. And those guys, I think, have a video on how to do that. But you will want to have an RTA to use to set this if you're trying to be precise about it. And that's what I recommend. Next, we're done. The device configuration is completed. And when I go back to the main map, you'll notice that the layout of this app is similar to our previous DSP app for the H8. We've got a map of the car on the left. The only speakers that appear on the map of the car are the ones we selected earlier. Right now, I've got the front left tweeter selected, and you can see on the screen the front left tweeter is highlighted on this list, and I've assigned a default crossover. Now that default crossover has only one function. Let's make sure we don't blow up the tweeter. That doesn't mean that we think that that's where all tweeters should be crossed over. We believe that you should enter in the proper crossover point for each driver and for the system. But that function there is to make sure you don't blow it up. So if I want to go in and change that, I can go in and set the link width setting. I can go in and set the filter setting to 24 dB. And now I have a different crossover. And I can select any of these predefined values. And when I do that, because left-right link is defaulted to on the crossover, I've set both crossovers. So you can also see the filter changed here. The steepness of the filter changed from this, which is the 12 dB, to this, which is the 24 dB. That's something that this graph here will show you the crossover settings for the channels that you have selected, and it will also show you what equalization you apply. Now, up here, you can see if you have the high-level input selected or the digital input selected, and we have 4 memory settings. There is a wire that you can use to shift through the memory settings, and you can select memory settings from the application on your smartphone. If you were connected, it would tell you so in this window here, and it would tell you, I believe, the serial number of the device that you're connected to, or the firmware, at least the firmware version of the device that you're connected to. If it says disconnected and you think you have your cable plugged in, you need to double check, make sure your cable's good, or that you plugged in the correct USB cable. This volume setting is similar to what we have in the H8. This volume setting can be controlled by the DRC app, but if you don't have the DRC app, this will just default to full. And then the sub volume is the same way. These over here, these output level settings for each channel are the ones that are persistent, and those are the ones that you want to use to get the balance correct between your subwoofer channels and everything else. Now, depending on the application, a lot of people now tune a DSP the way I tune a DSP, which is to do one channel at a time and then start adding the channels together, playing more than one channel at a time and seeing how they interact. So what we've got down here, we've got a solo button. This is something that Electromedia has on a lot of our products, and it's pretty rare outside. It is pretty common in the pro audio world. So if you click the solo button, that just means that you're isolating one channel. And you can click 3 solo buttons and isolate 3 channels. It's a really convenient tool, so you don't have to manually mute everything. It also makes it really easy when you're doing the QC that I think is really important at the beginning of the process, where you go through, play each channel one at a time, and make sure that the speaker is playing that you thought should be playing. One of the biggest ways that we can accidentally waste time tuning a DSP is not performing the QC at the beginning and making sure that the channel we're EQing is the speaker that we think it is. We all make mistakes, so we just need to double check before we start. Now, when we go down here to the bottom, you can see that we have a graphic equalizer. And there's a lot of installers who are comfortable with graphic equalizers. A lot of the small DSPs have started out with a graphic equalizer, and the H8 still has a graphic equalizer in it, although it has a few more bands. Why does this one have fewer bands? Well, let me show you. If I select this band and I click on it, you see how it says fine tuning? I can click on fine tuning and it will pull up that band's parametric controls. So I can take that 40 Hertz band and I can move it all the way up to 84. I could move it all the way down to 20. I can put it exactly where I need it. Also, actually, let me do this. I'm going to close this one and I'm going to go ahead and open up 6.3. Let's see. Right click. Did I close it by mistake? Oh my gosh, that was a mistake, folks. Let me go ahead and fix that. apologies. There we go. Okay. How are we doing? Can we see it now, Ben? All right. So here is my tweeter channel. Let me go ahead and select that. And now I'm going to move this over. And as I make this bump, I can take the center frequency for that bump and I can put it exactly where I want it with this slider. So that's one of the functions of a parametric equalizer, is I can choose the center frequency parameter. So I can put it exactly where I need it. The next thing I can do with a parametric equalizer is decide how wide the bandwidth is. And the engineering term for bandwidth in this application is Q, and that's a nice short word. So we use that a lot, just one letter. But when you see Q, it really means that we're talking about the width of the bands that are affected. And the analogy that I always use is that it's like a tire. You're talking about the sidewall of a tire. Is it a tall sidewall or is it a really, really low profile sidewall? So here is a very, very low profile sort of sidewall. We're only affecting a handful of frequencies at that center frequency. Now, if I go the other direction, you can see that we affect a whole lot of frequencies. The lower the Q number, the wider range of frequencies we're affecting. So this really helps you with only 15 bands in this case, have the ability to access or affect whatever number of frequencies you need. Does that make sense? So each of those channels has these equalizer settings available on it. So if I go from the tweeter to the door woofer, now on the door woofer, I've got a bunch of settings available here for it. On the rear speaker, you can see I've got a high pass, goes all the way up to 20K. And on the subwoofer, I've got a certain number of frequencies. Now, I am going to point out here that because of the limitations of how many frequencies you can select in the EQ, you cannot take all 15 EQ bands and stack them below 80 Hertz if you're trying to tune your subwoofer. I think it turns out where you can get 6 EQ bands on your subwoofer, which is about 4 more than I've used on subwoofers generally. So I think you're going to be okay there. So when I go to tune the system, what I would do is I would go ahead and solo. I'll show you how this isn't really meant to be a tuning class, but I'll go ahead and just give you a couple of tips on how I would do it. The first thing I would do is I would select the far front speaker. And the reason for that is that the far front speaker is the cabin speaker that really determines how loud the entire system can play. And if I have a midwoofer, then I'm going to select the midwoofer first. Now, if your system is symmetrical, where you have the same amount of power available for every speaker except the subwoofer, that usually has more, then that speaker is the one that is going to determine how loud your system can play if you're tuning it for sound quality and stereo imaging. So I start here and I leave the output level for this channel at full output because it's the farthest speaker away, not counting the subwoofer. When I go and tune the near side midwoofer, it'll be louder than the far side midwoofer because it's closer. So when I do that, I will end up going in and lowering its output level relative to the far one so that they end up sounding the same at the listening position. Now that's a car technique. When you are doing this in a motorcycle application, you are sitting dead center between the speakers. So you don't have to worry about that sort of thing. And you can really tune the system with left and right linked together. If you're going to equalize the left separately than you do the right, you're going to want to go in here and undo the left-right link button before you start equalizing. And that way, you can equalize the sound from the far speaker differently from the near speaker, which is a really important thing for off-center seating positions. So let's see here. we've got a button here on the crossover section, which is pretty common for our crossover sections, and it says invert phase. And what it does is it inverts the polarity, which then inverts the phase 180 degrees. Now, Ben and I were actually talking about this the other day. I was explaining something about how this works. All crossovers have overlap. It's called the transition band. So if I have a mid-bass speaker playing down to the subwoofer, and I have a subwoofer playing up to the transition band, whether I use a 24 dB per octave or a 12 dB per octave, or even up for some reason I try a higher filter rate, no matter what, there is always a transition band where both speakers are playing the same note. And that fact is why many aftermarket head units have had a subwoofer polarity button, because it doesn't matter what the phase is of the subwoofer outside the transition band. For the very low bass notes, where the only speaker in the car that's playing them is the subwoofer, doesn't matter what the phase is. But where the subwoofer and the front speakers in the cabin are both playing that note at the same time, we need to make sure that our big, powerful subwoofers are not trying to cancel out our smaller mid-bass speakers up front. Because if we don't, it's definitely possible. Those big, powerful subwoofers can cancel out a lot. And if, as I like to say, if you're a technician who's ever hooked up one subwoofer backwards by mistake and notice that all your bass disappears, you know how a big, powerful subwoofer can cancel out other sounds. So we have this phase button in there that allows you to make sure that you're not canceling out middle bass with your subwoofer. That is part of the toolbox to making sure that in stereo presentations, you're able to retain the illusion that the subwoofer and the drum kit are all out in front of the car. If you want the drum kit to sound like it's out over the hood or it's out in the windshield, then you have to get the subwoofer in phase with the mid-bass speakers. And so we've got this phase button to let you do that. Much more importantly, we actually have the delay setting right above it. And what we do is we allow you to enter in the actual distance for each channel. And then we do the math for you, and we will apply no delay to the speaker that is farthest away. And we will apply the proper delay for each of the other channels to synchronize them with the speaker that is farthest away. I understand that there are some DSPs out there that require you to do that arithmetic yourself. I used to install some of those. I had Post-its all over my toolbox with subtraction, but we do that arithmetic for you. And after you're done, we have a fine set function that allows you to take the delay that was calculated and vary it higher or lower to get the exact result you're looking for. I tend to not have to do that. I find that when I'm relatively close with my delay, especially the mid-woofer to subwoofer delay, I don't have to use that fine set function. I find that there are other ways that I can get better results. But some dealers like to use that tool, and we have it. We also support linkwits, which are my favorite crossover types. As many people have talked about in the show in the past, I think, when you use a fourth order or 24 dB Linkwitz Riley filter slope, you minimize the interactions between adjacent channels as long as you get your delays right. So we support that, and we let you set your delays. Now, after that, when you've got the entire system tuned the way you want it, you've got your equalizer set, you've got your crossover set, you've listened to it, this is the sound you want. Then you want to come in here and you want to, whoop, let's see, I think I hit the wrong button. Let me close that for a second. There we go. We would finalize to the DSP. And finalize is the electromedia term for writing to non-volatile memory. If we forget to finalize, then when the key gets turned off and the system shuts down, our settings will disappear. So we don't want that to happen. So finalizing the DSP is always something that we do at the end to retain our work. I also go up here and I go to save. And when I click on save, I actually go in and I save a file to a folder on my PC, and I put in the customer name, I put in the vehicle name, and I may put in some other information so that if I ever have to go back and retrieve it, I've got it. Now, also, we have this memory setting button, and the memory button will allow you to copy the preset you've just created to any of the other presets. Or you could go retrieve a preset from one of the other settings and load it. Now, one of the reasons that's useful is that if your customer has the ability to access different presets, you better make sure all of them are filled, because you don't want the customer accidentally switching a fully active system to a preset without a tweeter crossover activated. That would be bad. So we do automatically turn the crossover on to prevent that, but you want to make sure that the settings are appropriate for your system. Also, if we do use the preset function to provide our customer with different tunes, oftentimes the way we do that is we copy over the base preset over to an additional preset, and then we modify the second one. So this is a way to do that. Now, when we go back into the settings, and we go into the input equalizer, we plan on offering some adjustments here for, or some preloads here for certain vehicles. But the biggest thing I wanted to mention for this is, if you're a dealer that does motorcycles all the time, and I am not a motorcycle guy, but my understanding is that the dealers that do motorcycles every day generally will have the scan tool for a Harley that allows them to change the preset tuning of the Harley to something that is less dramatic. It turns out none of the settings for a Harley are actually perfectly flat. We're just looking for something that's a little more linear. If you're in a situation where you're doing a Harley and you don't have access to that scan tool, then you can use this input EQ to knock the rough edges off of the factory curve, and that will allow you to get much better results in the end. I know that a lot of processors don't have this capability, and I want to make sure to highlight that and underline it, because our dealers, what's the right way to say this? If all you've done is Harleys with a scan tool, you probably haven't thought about it. But if you're used to doing cars, this is a function you probably expect to have. And we want to make sure that you know that our small DSP has it. So after we've got all that set up, if we need to load a file, we can go in here and load a file that we saved before. If we're pulling one of these devices out of one bike and putting it in a different bike with a different audio package, we can actually reset to factory default and then start from scratch. And there was one other thing. Oh, the output limiter. This is something that allows you to set up a limiter like we have in a lot of pro audio gear, so that if you have a customer that you know is going to turn it to 11, at least they won't be clipping the outputs of our device. They might clip your amplifiers if you don't set those up properly, but we won't clip the outputs of the DSP. We can change the output channel names. It's grayed out right now because I don't actually have a piece of hardware connected to the software. We can activate the digital input and make it switch automatically. However, I do want to mention it's a coaxial input, so it's not an optical input like we have used in a lot of automotive products before. There are some digital audio players that have a coaxial input, and it is also possible to use an adapter. Now, let's go back in here, and if we go to options, we have input selection by wire, and you can decide if you're going to select the analog or digital when the wire is active. And you also have, do you want it to turn on and off with DC sensing? And do you want there to be a turn on delay and a turn off delay? These are configurable in the software. This is really useful for a lot of modern cars, because as you may have noticed, when you turn off the key, the display on the radio may go dark, but that does not mean that the internals of the radio have shut off. oftentimes the internals of the factory radio do not shut off until we get out of the car, close all the doors, lock the doors, and then there is a delay between close and lock and the internal of the radio actually shutting down. If we want to keep our system on until that happens, we may have a turn on, turn off pop we're trying to avoid. We can go up to 10 seconds on our delay here. Shut off delay, we can go up to 10 seconds, and turn on delay, we can also go up to 10 seconds. So I've seen people trying to solve problems caused by turn on or turn off synchronization issues where they're putting in a, hey, I know Jeff Smith's here, and whatever replaced the TR7, I'm sure they, they're a great tool. But if in this case, you wouldn't need to worry about that. It's built into the device. Now, preferential presets is something that I like to mention because you can actually decide which preset should be associated with the analog input and which preset should be associated with the digital input. And you can make that switching automatic. So when you switch back and forth between the two settings, you can actually change the tune file automatically, and it's just one wire you need to worry about. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and close that up. I think that we've got a pretty solid set of features on this device. The software is similar to what you've seen before if you're a Hertz dealer, but it's not so, but it incorporates features that you haven't had before. Now, the one thing I'm going to show, and I know that we talked about possibly doing this on an emulation on the PC to make it a little clearer, but I'm just going to go ahead and hold this up. You can see here, that is the software app, and you can see that that's configured for a motorcycle. And I can go through, and this is the DRC control. You can see that I've got a volume control right there. And if I touch the subwoofer, I've got a subwoofer control. I can even change the memory preset from the DRC application. So if your motorcycle rider has the phone on the handlebars, they could do that. I understand that a lot of people have the phone in a pocket and they're not going to be able to do that. In a car, this allows you to control the DRC without running a cable the length of the car. So that's a feature that we've had a lot of positive feedback about. We've had some people say, how on earth are you going to tune using a phone screen? And I understand that. I do want to point out that we have tablet mode as well. If you have an Android tablet or if you have a iPad, you can control it in that mode, and it is larger. But let me see if I can show you how to set up the equalizer. Let's see here. Configurator, offline, create new setup, car, and let's go to EQ. So this is how we set the EQ. You've got the same chart. You've got the gain right here. And you can select the center frequency right there. So we have taken each of the functions, and we recognize that one of the things that our dealers like about our software is that almost everything's on the main page. But when you go to the smartphone, we've broken it into EQ, crossover, level, and in that way, you're ready to tune the entire system without having to use a stylus to control everything. So, Ben, other than that, I think I've got nothing.
Well, you got it. You did a lot there, sir. So thank you for putting that presentation together. I didn't even expect you to show the phone app, but I think it's important that you did because it's got some key features, like you said, the volume and the bass, which is the obvious part. But just to comment real quick on the tuning from a phone. I feel like after having sat through this training, you're probably better off learning the software in the PC mode to understand like the bigger picture. And then that will probably make you more comfortable because then you'll know exactly what you're looking for maybe specifics on the phone and the fine details.
I agree with you. That's my preferred way. The feedback we hear from the field is that we have some dealers who are motorcycle only dealers, and they use
Mhm.
our speakers in motorcycles quite a bit, and they only use their phone. They don't have a PC
I guess
dedicated.
you can't
to
really
the
put your laptop anywhere on a bike, can you?
It's a
Maybe
little
maybe it's
tricky.
that.
So
Yeah.
we decided that we would like to help out those dealers as well, and we even made a Mac version for this device. And
Which
I'm
is
a
very
Mac
important to
user.
note. Very important to note. Not a lot, you know, I sit through a lot of these. Not a lot of them out there are Mac friendly. So I'm happy to see that the Hertz one is.
We want to see how this does. It's a bit of an experiment. It's a bit of a market test. We don't have a plan today to do Mac versions of any other software at the moment, but we want to see how this product does out there.
Just one note I wanted to highlight. There is a digital in, but it's copper coaxial in. It's not a Toslink in.
That is correct.
Okay, fair enough. We have a discussion to be had here. Obviously, I know these boys have been taking notes as well. So let's go ahead and bring everybody back in. We got some questions for everybody. I know they might have some questions for you as well, Ken. Of course, that's a DSP. I'm also happy, Ken, that you showed how small it was. I was really worried that you wouldn't have one, but you do. I mean, no wonder guys are putting it in bikes. Look at that thing. It's the size of a wallet, for crying out loud. It's tiny, absolutely tiny. I guess, Ken, let me start with you. You know, you showed us the setup, the entire process, and even though you didn't have to, you went and did some tuning tricks because I knew you would anyways. But in your opinion, how do you think dealers in the real world will best utilize this small form factor with the features that it has?
Well, we've actually talked to our dealers about this before the project started and as it's been developed. And we're hearing about using it in side-by-sides. We're hearing about using it in boats. We're hearing about using it on motorcycles. We're hearing about using it in Jeeps and Broncos and vehicles that are designed to go out and have significant off-road exposure and dirt and humidity exposure. So that's the first thing. A secondary thing that we're hearing is because we have a flexible mixer and because we have 6 inputs, it's a little bit more flexible for some OEM integrations compared to our classic H8 DSP. The H8 DSP has 4 analog in and it has an optical in, and that gets used a lot with preamp adapters or external preamps, as I like to call them. But if you have a system, let's say that you have a Chevy Silverado with Bose, and you've got dash speakers and door speakers that are fully active and they're not in phase with each other because of the Bose processing, and you just want to retain the factory processing, you just want to pass it through, you can take our S8, you can connect 1 and 2 inputs to the dash speakers, 3 and 4 inputs to the door speakers, 5 and 6 inputs to the rear speakers, and you can keep them all separate. You can keep your fader working. You can keep, you don't have to sum them together. And then you can amplify that. And with that particular vehicle, a lot of times there is a factory Bose subwoofer, but the subwoofer doesn't play any lower electrically than the door speakers. You can actually derive your bass signal out of the front door speaker. So pass that all along to your amplifier system and then EQ it to what you would like it to sound like. And you get dynamics, you get bass, you get volume, but we didn't have any conflict with what was already there.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Non-conflicting is certainly a term that we all like in this industry. Justin, this is a simple DSP, you know, in the sense that it doesn't have the big features that the big standalones do. However, it does come feature packed for its size. So is this the one that the market has been waiting for, in your opinion? Oh, audio, Justin. Make sure you unmute yourself.
I mean, our car audio market is always behind OEM, right? The money that goes into OEM, automotive development, speaker placement, restrictions, DSP, that's what we are often trying to improve, correct, fix, or retain. And with this DSP, we're noticing, you know, I'm sure when you see, you know, we talked about the Harley and the flash tool, right? Well, Harley OEM is utilizing their factory DSP to protect their speakers, to change the notes and the tone of the audio depending on the revs of the bike, depending on which gear the bike is in, right? So we in our industry are trying to catch up to that and to be able to correct and fix that. So I think to have a DSP like this that's conformally coded, that's still like Ken has talked about the whole time, is small in size, but still really powerful in feature set, as in none of the sacrifices that you need have been made, right? So it still contains everything that you're going to need to do exactly what you're trying to do with that DSP. And I think that's what's really important about this, is that you're getting a full featured, true, 21 volt RMS input on the high level side, small DSP that's going to give you 8 channels out of real DSP. And you did mention it's not the flagship or whatever, but I mean it's 95% of what that flagship is in the size of a cell phone, right? And I think especially with the Bluetooth and talking about motorcycle guys is, if you work for a Harley dealer or you do a lot of Harley, those bikes are the same, right? 2 speakers in the front, maybe a set in the lower fairings or whatever, and the ability to literally just preload your tune, even if you tune it once on a computer and you save it to the DSP, save it to your phone as a file, and then just load and repeat and go. And I mean, that's the goal with DSP at all, right? We have a hard time in Canada charging money, $110 an hour for tuning a stereo. Yeah, well, I'm going to take 12 hours to tune your stereo, right? Good luck, right? So to be able to produce a repeatable, predictable outcome every time is efficient, and that's what's going to make money in the Bay.
And does the other guy's DSP say high-res certified on it?
And it says high-res certified.
I'm just saying. Ken made a point of it, and it's true. It's absolutely true. Phil, let's go to you for some input here. You've had your fair share of playing with GUIs and interfaces and all that type of stuff. What was your impressions of this interface for this simplified DSP?
Well, coming from my point of view, my side of the business, I'm not like Ken and Justin. I don't eat and sleep DSP every day. I found that it's very intuitive. It's simple. If you don't do that every day, it doesn't take a while for you to figure out what you need to do. It's simple. Cross-platform, Mac, PC, phone, tablet. It's very, very intuitive, simple. So you're never going to be stuck without your PC, so you can't do a fix. You can use your phone, your tablet, and it's so intuitive that you won't search for 5 hours to find that one feature you need to correct.
Now, Ken, correct me if did we look at that point? I know we did in the preamble, but there are help question marks everywhere throughout that software that you could easily click on. And what the folks at Electromedia have done, if you don't, can you bring that up again?
I think what you're talking about there, and let me see if I can show you the right spot, because I'm suddenly drawing a blank on where we put it.
It's just what Phil had just mentioned. Kind of
what we have here, actually, the way we've got it set up is there's a help file under file on this one, and you can go in and change your language, look for an update, pull up the online user's manual, or there will be some tutorials available about that. So that's really the best. Oops. All right. Let me make sure I get that up.
It just goes to show, though, like the folks at Electromedia, whoever's behind the software and making it so accessible, multi-platform, like they really thought about this. They said, if we're going to come out with this new one, we're going to make it easy, accessible, multi-platform, and really just, like you said, Ken, taking everything you've learned on maybe some of the, like I said, the bigger models, streamlined it, and just make it work. Like, this is no nonsense. This stuff will get it done. Let's have this generic conversation. I'm going to go around the table on this one. I'm going to start with you, Ken. DSP is not new, right? It's there. It's here. It's what we're dealing with every single day. Now, with this type of gear at this level of refinement, I'll call it refinement, okay? What advice do you have for dealers now that could really help improve their DSP game? And that could be sales, that could be setup, tuning. In general, how do you feel about that?
Well, when I started working in this business in '86, when dinosaurs roamed the earth, the shop that I worked at was an established car audio shop and had great brands, and we didn't have a router, and we didn't have any router bits, and we didn't have, I think what we had was a radial arm saw that we could wheel out behind the shop. And if you talk to a modern car audio shop today, the vast majority of them have a fab shop. They've got a router. They've got a selection of bits. They've got templates. They have the ability to make things we couldn't make at our shop in 1986. And the reason for that is these dealers have invested in the tools and they've invested in the time to know how to use them. Is that too subtle?
That's not subtle at all. That's
Okay.
not subtle at all. That's pretty much in your face, and a message that needs to be repeated over and over.
What I tell people is that they should learn how to do DSP the way they learned how to install a stereo. Put one in their car.
Mm.
And if you don't have a DSP in your own car, then what are you learning on? You know, are you trying to learn in the 30 minutes you have before the customer shows up? I think that you really need to eat the dog food, and you really need to have that product in your own car so that you have the opportunity to not just experience the setup, but experience the benefits. I tuned a system the other day for somebody in our industry who hadn't had a system in their car in years and years, and we did a Hertz Legend front stage in that car, and we tuned it up, and I'm still getting text messages from them about how great it sounds. They've been in the business for years, but there's a difference between, you know, we're not selling widgets. We're selling an experience. And once you have that experience, it's hard to let go.
Live it, learn it, experience it, then share it. Justin, I'd like to hear your input on this topic.
Yeah, I mean, as far as dealers go, like Ben, we've talked a lot, and I'm always very adamant in what I say is no matter kind of what DSP you're putting in, no matter how good the processor is, no matter how good of tuning you are, it doesn't mean jack if you don't understand what's happening before the DSP, right? And I think the folks at Hertz have done a very good job with this DSP to make sure, like I don't want to say foolproof, but they've given you the tools that you need at the perfect price point for whatever you're doing to make sure that you're not putting gobbledygook into this DSP. So you know what you're putting in there is going to be much more refined coming out. And I think that's an important step with dealers that a lot of them forget. And you know, Hertz has done a very good job, even with the H8, at making it so that you get some sort of visual representation of what is actually happening in the steps or process of beginning with the DSP. And I think that's super, super important.
Very well. I'm Steve or Phil. I'm going to leave that last one to you. You know, we've heard what Ken says. Try it yourself in your own car. Live it, learn it, experience it. Understand what the benefits are before you even start trying to play with it. And then Justin added to that. Take the time and understand what's happening in the vehicle for you to require a DSP, I think is what the message was there, right, Justin? So what can you add to that, Steve or Phil?
Well, it's going to be, both guys made very good assessments on, you know, about DSP and improving sales. But, you know, the key is to, it's going to sound cheesy, but learn how to walk before you run, meaning that, you know, those dealers that have, you know, not a lot of knowledge with the DSP, it can be frustrating if you're using one of those products and you're just, as Ken said, just trying to install it and, you know, figure it out on the run. So the key point is to, you know, test it, use it, learn about it, call us for us to support, you know, offer the support for those DSPs. And
because apparently, Steve, you have this new team around you that certainly can provide some advice.
Yeah.
Apparently. That's what it seems like.
Couple of key guys.
Awesome. Listen, I want to take this time, Ken. Thank you so much for sharing with us that entire run through. Like, you went above and beyond and really showed just beyond setup, also some tuning. I know people are going to watch that back. I did want to make one mention here. Jeff, you said Jeff Smith. You mentioned Jeff Smith before. He came on. He mentioned something about a very cool feature being the sub-phase button. Did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, he would actually mention that while I was pointing it out in the crossover section, that we have a polarity button that inverts the phase for any channel. And I was going through and explaining how to use that on the crossover, and I saw Jeff chime in, and Jeff's a great audience member. I've been in a lot of trainings with him on both sides of the ball, and so I always like to see him there.
And he's a DSP nut. Like, he loves this stuff too. Like, absolutely loves it. So, guys, Justin and Ken, thank you so much for doing it. Justin, welcome, obviously, to the Automobility team. I look forward to our future adventures together in this context. And Ken, Don't go away too far, because I know later on this month we're also going to be circling back with you, and we'll be talking about Audison as well.
Can't wait.
We'll talk to you soon. Take care, guys. Stephen and Phil, let's get you guys back in here just to close this up. This was a great session. Let's talk about Automobility, right? This is important because you guys are the distributor. So, you know, when it comes to providing support, you touched on it right there, that last question there, Steve. Let's make this loud and clear. You know, if I'm a dealer, I'm in Canada, I want to become a Hertz dealer. Yeah, I'm going to need some training. So what am I expect? What is there waiting for me to be a part of as far as training and support is concerned?
Well, let me go back about 2 years. You know, we all know that 2020, 2021 was, you know, roller coaster of, you know, a lot of things happening and kind of a spiraling out of control at sometimes with inventory, and it was just based on reaction. So we did a lot of virtual trainings. We tried to make the most out of them. It's not, you know, offering trainings for DSP via, you know, Zoom is not optimal because you cannot hear the result pretty much. DSP is about the end result. So no, we made the most out of it. You know, we thank all of the dealers that have been, you know, part of those. And, you know, part of our plan for 2022 and moving up was to add product specialists. I'd say one product specialist, which is Phil right here. You know, things happen sometimes. Timing is key in this industry, and you know, Phil started early June, and you know, I was ecstatic because we all know him. Great guy, great trainer, smart. And then a week later, my phone rings, and the firm just hired Justin Bott. That's going to represent the, you know, audio brands that we carry out west. So it was a double whammy in a matter of a week. So
you went to being all alone in your little corner. Car audio. Yep, amazing.
No, but no, it's just amazing. You know, those two guys are, you know, we spent a bit of time together, and great guys, very, very smart guys.
And I think it's the dealers are going to benefit ultimately. That's what it's.
Well, that was the ultimate goal. You know, we listened to our dealers, and we knew that to be able to support fully, especially a brand like Audison, but Hertz as well with the DSP, we needed that point guard internally for trainings, product specialists, supporting sales, supporting dealers, in contact with dealers. And then we have now Eastern and Western Canada, so we have two of them, which is great. So to wrap this up, moving into 2022, we'll do more in-person trainings. This is the focus with those fine gentlemen and Ken Ward. So we're currently working on the training schedule for the remainder of the year. We'll try to assess, you know, every part of the country. It's very important to finally be able to go into dealers and, as Ken mentioned, use products in their cars so they can get the feel out of it and hear it. You know, it's key.
Absolutely. All right. Well, if you're interested in Hertz audio products, learning about the new S8 DSP like we covered today, you want to check out their website. It is hertz-audio.com. It's up there right now, all the specs, everything you need to know. And if you're a Canadian shop and you'd like to get more information about becoming a potential Hertz dealer, well, get a hold of the team over at Automobility. They can be found at automob.ca. Mr. Phil, Mr. Steve, thank you for joining us today, and look forward to our next one.
Thanks, man.
Take
Thanks
care.
for having us.
Continue tuning into CNA Networks, guys. Keep it locked. If you're into DSP, we got a whole lot more where that came from. Believe it or not, we are now into the DSP sessions, practically the entire month of July, right through to Thursday, July 28th. We are going one-on-one and covering every brand there is that plays in the DSP realm within mobile audio. Also, if you haven't already, make sure you check out this and more videos on our website located at cmanetworks.com. Search by your favorite brand, by category, or even your favorite trainer. Ken Ward's got a ton of stuff that we've done together, and you can check out all the videos we've done together right there. That's it for this one. Thanks for tuning in to CMA Workshops presented by SiriusXM. I'm your host, Ben Wu. Until next time, we connect.
I mean, yeah, let's talk about
Stop
today.
it.
Today where I'm gonna go
Yo.
choppers.
Roll it down.
I am.
You don't need a car to listen to SiriusXM. You can listen anywhere. You know that, right?
What? Kevin Hart's Laugh Out Loud Radio.
Kevin, you could use your phone.
What? What?
Alexa, play Kevin Hart's Laugh Out Loud Radio on SiriusXM.
What?
This is how I know you're getting old. I guess that was it.
What?